Growing up, I learned a few lessons from watching my mom. First, in order to be complete, you need a man in your life, so be willing to put up with a lot of crap. Second, in order to get a man, you have to be skinny, and you can never really be skinny enough. And third, when all else fails, you can always fall back on a girl's best friends. Pizza, Kentucky Fried Chicken, and ice cream, especially ice cream. You can imagine how incorporating those lessons screwed me up for life. I came to accept early on that I was never going to look like a model. I tried starving myself once in high school. I gave up after about 2 hours. Let's face it, I love food. Since not eating wasn't going to be my ticket to skinnyhood, I turned to my next best option, exercise. I became obsessed with exercise. I did yoga, kung fu, kickboxing, inline skating, and aerobics. Remember when there used to be a class called just aerobics? After college, I married a physically fit man. He ran and hiked, so I ran and hiked with him. Well, not exactly with him. I mean, he was faster than me, so we'd start out together and then he'd leave me behind. I got used to running alone, but hiking alone got kind of scary sometimes, like when I didn't know which way he'd gone on the trail. Eventually, he got tired of hearing me whine about it and bought us some walkie-talkies so we could communicate like that. I was in the best shape of my life when I was married to him. I mean, all muscle, no fat. But I didn't know it. I always felt like a slow-moving blob. When I'd complain to him about my weight, he'd reassure me by quoting his favorite TV show. He'd say, "You're not fat, you're just festively plump." When I got tired of being compared to Cartman, we got divorced. I needed motivation to make up for the lack of all that negative reinforcement, so I signed up to run my first marathon with Team in Training, Go Team. They have an awesome training program. The only problem is I had to raise like $3,000 and had no idea how to do it. I am lucky enough to have a friend who is a fundraising genius, and she helped me plan a bachelorette auction. And that is the only reason why, swear to God, I was sitting at my computer late one night trolling for hot single men in my area. I came upon this one guy's profile. Man, let me tell you, he was hot. From a purely fundraising perspective, I needed to contact him. He looked like a top dollar auction item. He refused to participate in the auction, something about suffering terrible stage fright, but it turns out we had a lot in common, so I friended him. He was sweet and funny and liked all the same things I liked and seemed to be responding to my emails kind of like he might like me. He even came to a party I was hosting. In person, he was gorgeous, tall and thin with the bluest eyes. Of course, I couldn't actually talk to him. Every time I looked at him, my heart caught in my throat. But my friends told me that they saw him checking me out all night. I didn't believe them though, especially since he never followed through. A few weeks later, his status changed to in a relationship. I ran my marathon and then immediately signed up to do it again, and then again after that. Running 26.2 miles, it turns out, is addictive, especially to someone like me. I started dating this guy, Roy, who we got kind of serious together, but he never exercised, which was weird for me. I was still in pretty good shape, a little heavier than when I was married, but I ran all the time and worked out with a trainer. But occasionally Roy would make little comments that would get under my skin, like after I met his uncle, who was mid-60s and rotund, but still something of a womanizer. How do men get away with that, by the way? I joked with Roy that he better watch out or his uncle would try to steal me, and he said, "Oh, no, he likes skinny girls. He'd think you were a heifer." Now, Roy never actually called me a heifer, but he did point out that he also usually preferred skinny girls. It was particularly annoying coming from someone who never exercised. I mean, Roy wasn't fat, but he looked like he was expecting. I didn't say that to him, of course, but I suggested that maybe we should work out together sometime. His response was, "I don't need to work out, everyone calls me Beanpole." I was shocked. I mean, he had skinny legs and was tall, but his baby bump did not look like it belonged on a beanpole. So I said, who calls you Beanpole? He said, "Oh, well, everyone called me that in school." Roy was about 30 at this point. So I said, "Has anyone called you that since school?" He laughed and said, "I guess I'm just naturally skinny." Yeah, we broke up before my next marathon. And then something amazing happened. Remember that really hot guy I was just telling you about, the one I met online? His status went from in a relationship to it's complicated to single. I invited him over to hang out. It was 2 nights before my marathon, and if you have ever done a big race, you know you're supposed to get rest 2 nights before, because the night before you just don't get enough sleep. Well, unfortunately for my training, we had the best date ever. We watched a cheesy movie, ate popcorn, talked, laughed, my dog approved of him, and then I realized how late it was. I walked him to his car, but when we got there, he said, "Well, you know, I have to walk you back to your front door." When we were on my doorstep and I went to say goodnight, we kissed. 2 hours later, when we were still kissing, he stopped and kind of pulled away from me and just looked at me. I was like, "What's wrong?" He said, "Nothing's wrong. I just want to look at you and take in this moment. You're so pretty." I thought, oh no, here we go. He's a player. No one talks like that and means it. I went back to kissing him anyway. I mean, come on. Needless to say, I did not get enough rest that night. I ran the worst race I've ever run and was in pain the entire marathon. But Bart, his name is Bart, Bart came to the race to cheer me on, and a week later we went hiking together. I was still in pain from the marathon, so I was extra slow on the hike. I said, "I'm sorry, I know I'm slowing you down." He said, "Don't worry about it, this is the perfect pace for me." I said, "It's okay, really, you don't have to wait for me." He looked at me like I was crazy and said, "We're hiking together, why would I leave you?" He didn't leave me hiking or on any of our runs together, and neither did the pain. We ran the Shamrock Half Marathon and a 10-miler and even signed up to run a full marathon together, but the pain finally got the best of me, and a doctor told me that with all the running I'd been doing, I herniated my back. I have not been able to run at all for the past 2 years. I've been working on getting better, and Bart has stayed by my side. We haven't been able to go on any long hikes, but last year we did walk down the aisle together. Of course, I gained weight. You can't go from running an average of 20 miles a week to not even being able to run one without it having an impact. But when I complained to Bart about my weight, he says, "Stop being silly, you're beautiful." And even though I am the heaviest I've ever been, I believe him. It was my bad luck that marathoning ruined my ability to run just when I finally found the perfect partner. But if I hadn't signed up to run that first marathon, I never would have met Bart. And if I hadn't been through a few crappy relationships along the way, I might not realize how lucky I am to have found him.